If you've been in this field for a couple of years, you know that it took a while for board portals to gain traction, mainly because directors tend to be older than the average bear. Most were technophobic. That old paper world was a logistical nightmare. It took so much time to put together a binder of documents on a regular basis and mail them all over the country, perhaps all over the globe if your board had directors out of the country. No matter how much time you spent perfecting that perfect board package, it was inevitable that some extraneous weird document that would just sneak itself in there, and then the director would call the CEO to ask, what in the world is this thing? And then the CEO is going to call you. No bueno. So now companies use board portals for the most part, primarily an off-the-shelf product from a handful of well-known providers, and it's a godsend, particularly when it comes to collecting unanimous consents. But there are still a few things to be wary of today on Zippy Point. I'm Brock Romanek, and I'm a big fan of Use. There's not a whole lot of choice when it comes to selecting your board portal provider. They could be pricey, but the alternative is creating your own product or trying out a service from a vendor that really is not in the governance space. Both are dubious endeavors. Here are 8 things about board portals you should know. 1. Changing provider is not easy. 2. Ensure all directors use it properly. 3. Turn off ability to track usage. 4. Enable note-taking. 5. But train how to best take notes. 6. Add a reference section. 7. Bring extra portals. 8. Bring the Wi-Fi code and a techie. 1. Changing the provider is not easy. So once directors get accustomed to a particular board portal service, it's hard to talk them into moving to something new, regardless if another provider has functionalities that you and the board desires. There might be some directors who use that other provider for the other boards that they sit on, and in fact, they might be the one that's pushing you to make the change, but they're likely to be the outliers. Your other directors are not likely to approve of a switch. So until you get a board whose familiarity with technology is such that a move like this doesn't rattle them, you're better off asking your board portal provider to add the functionality you seek rather than move on to another provider. 2. Ensure all directors use it properly. It's common for companies that use portals to not provide paper versions at all anymore. Most of the portals will let directors print out the materials that they want to. If they choose to do that, they do it on their own. Of course, you can turn that feature off for security reasons. You don't want a lot of this paper floating around your sensitive stuff. And luckily, I think we're beyond that period of time where some directors had their assistants print off all the materials that were made available on a portal for them. That really defeats the use of portals in the first place, and it presents real securities risks, as I mentioned. However, in case you still have some old timers who just can't make the change, keep your eyes open and spot these dinosaurs. If you find one, impress upon them that the dangers they pose. You might need to move your concern up the ladder to have the CEO, board chair, or lead director approach them. And if they still resist, it may be time for them to retire from the board. It's as simple as that. It's a sign. So when you're onboarding a new director, ask them what portals that they're familiar with, whether they like it. Get a feel for how facile they are with the technology in a casual conversation setting. That will help dictate how much training you need to provide about how they can use your portal, or whether you just landed a new dinosaur on your board. 3. Turn off ability to track usage. Board portals offer features that you can elect to disable or enable, and even though you want to figure out whether a director isn't properly using a board portal, you do not want to track their usage. One reason to turn this feature off is the general notion of privacy. We're not quite at Big Brother yet, but most importantly is that there could be a lawsuit that claims that the board is not exercising due care. Exhibit A would be the plaintiff's lawyer pointing out that certain documents never seem to have been accessed for a specific director as reflected by the board portal's tracking data. That's no good. So turn off that tracking feature the first day you get your board portal. However, I do recommend that you leave on some of the other portal features. For example, you should allow any director to see any agendas or materials related to any board committee that they don't sit on. And you should allow any director to go back in time to review older materials, the ones that reside on the portal. I'm not suggesting you should have all your board materials over time on the portal just the last year, a year and a half or so, but let directors go back in that period of time to have a look. 4. Enable note-taking. So speaking of discovering lawsuits, one of the hottest areas of debate in the governance field is whether you should permit directors to take notes. Personally, I think it's unrealistic and unfair to not allow directors to take notes. I say turn on that feature, allowing them to do it directly within the board portal. This is something that not a lot of people agree with. Many turn off this feature in their portal. They worry that notes from a director can really screw the company and the director too when the notes are handed over during discovery. But in my view, turning off that portal feature forces directors to take notes by hand, which means that they will literally be printing off the materials then, which is a security risk in itself. Not to mention the hassle it poses for the directors that have to go and do this. So my rationale is that you want directors to ask questions. You want them to be educated, know their stuff. So expecting them to read the board materials for a meeting and thinking that they'll be able to remember everything that they read, it's just not realistic. Even if you tell them that they can't take notes by hand, they're going to do it anyway, and you're not likely going to know that they're doing it. It's better for them to be open about it, then they're less likely to hate you for being unreasonable, and perhaps they'll be more accountable because it's not a practice they're doing secretly. You have some control over what they do now, including how to produce it if there's indeed a legal hold. Don't forget your own advanced notes. You can make these right in the portal for yourself, highlighting all the approvals you need to ensure that the board handles during the meeting. On the portal, you might also have a set of talking points that you keep on the left and a pile of the board resolutions that you keep on the right. And as you flip through the portal, if you've highlighted the resolutions, it's a cue to get whatever approvals that you need. 5, but train how to best take notes. So if you do allow note taking, you have the right to say, this is the best way to couch your notes. Educate them the way a litigator would think. It's probably best to have a litigator train them directly. Have a litigator come in for a board presentation, or have the litigator teach you on how to teach them. You'll need to constantly refresh your director's memories about all this stuff. Send them reminders at least once every 6 months with instructions about how to best take notes and what to do with them in the event that there is a legal hold. 6, add a reference section. So don't neglect to include a reference section in your board portal, adding the materials that you want, the stuff that directors otherwise will be always nagging you about. Set it up in a way that makes it easy for your directors to find what they need, but only archive 1 to 2 years worth of materials, as I said before. Don't leave your crown jewels hanging. See my separate Vid-Guide about board materials, which I talk about this topic in more detail, a link of which is beneath this video. 7, bring extra portals. So you've got to bring extra supplies to the meetings and extra iPads with the portal loaded on it, not to mention extra chargers. See my separate Vid-Guide about the logistical things you can do to improve your board meetings. Some smaller companies might not be able to afford extra iPads. I can understand that, but having extra iPads around in case a director forgets their iPad is smart. You definitely should bring extra chargers to the meeting. Some corporate secretaries now routinely have the chargers for each director plugged in and waiting for the directors when they arrive at the meeting. And probably the trickiest part of using a portal can be that not all the people in the meeting, not all of management, not all the presenters have one. So if the presenter is not part of senior management, they won't be able to have access to the board materials except for their own presentation, and sometimes they need more than that, and that's when you can hand them an extra iPad with the portal loaded on it at the meeting. 8, bring the Wi-Fi code and a techie. So always print out the Wi-Fi password at your company. The Wi-Fi password for guests might change every so often, every month or so. So if that's the case, make multiple copies of that, because you're going to have presenters, guests coming in and out of the meeting, and you want them to be able to get on Wi-Fi. Always have your techie in the room, at least at the beginning of the meeting, in case someone's having trouble with the Wi-Fi or something happened to one of their iPads and they can't access the board portal. But you do want to overdo the tech stuff. Be prepared for the unexpected. The last thing you want to happen at a board meeting is a delay or an outright failure because of a technological snafu.